daily news analysis. So today is 7th December 2018. So the first topic that we are going to discuss is the Saudi-US relation. So let's analyze why this has appeared in the newspaper. So today there is a editorial in the Hindu newspaper, that is a relationship under stress. So here we should be focusing on the importance of the US-Saudi relation and what is this stress factor, and if there is going to be a conflict or a difference in opinion between this Saudi and US relation, how it is going to impact the India and the global economy. So this is the relevance of this article. So let's analyze the historical perspective of the Saudi and US relation also. So here the Jamal Khashoggi case and its impact on the US-Saudi relation is the relevance of this news article. And along with this topic, we should also cover that the West Asia policy of the US, then the OPEC and the Saudi-Iran relationship. We know that the Saudi is a Sunni-dominated country and Iran is a Shia-dominated country, and this has led to a conflict in the West Asian region. So this factor has also influenced the US-Saudi relation. Now let's analyze the history of the US-Saudi relation. So it is a special relationship which has begun in the 1933, and this full diplomatic relation has established during this time. Despite the differences between the two countries, so the differences here is that one country is the ultra-conservative Islamic absolute monarchy, that is the Saudi, and the US is a secular constitutional republic. So in political terms, the two countries have a difference over their political regime, but still the countries have come in close terms because of the mutual needs that the countries has to fulfill from one another. And further, the former President George W. Bush and the Barack Obama have a close and a strong relationship with the senior members of the Saudi royal family. And since this World War II, especially from the 1945 onwards, the two countries have been allied in opposition to the communism. So the communism has been a threat for both the Saudi and the US, because of the US has this communism as a threat because US is following the capitalism, and the communism was expanding into the West Asia, especially the USSR has captured the Afghanistan. So obviously the Saudi is having the fear that the USSR is soon going to conquer the Iran and then to the Saudi. So this fear has moved Saudi moved close to the US. So this is how the communism factor has acted to bring US and Saudi in close terms. And further, in support of the stable oil price, the US needs Saudi. And further, the stability in the oil fields and the oil shipping in the Persian Gulf and the stability in the economies of the Western countries where Saudi has been invested a lots of money. So in this terms, the Saudi needs the cooperation of the US, and in order to bring a stability in the oil prices, the US needs the Saudi. So this is how the mutual needs of these two countries bring them in the close relation. And further, despite the strong relationship between the two countries, the opinion polls between the two nations show the negative feeling between the American people and the Saudi people. So the recent survey conducted in both countries shows that a negative attitude towards this relationship. So the US people or the public opinion in the US is against the US cordial relation with the Saudi and vice versa. So the Saudi people in recent years, particularly the American feelings towards the Desert Kingdom. So the American people and the Saudi people in recent years have this different opinion regarding their relation with each other. Now let's analyze this Jamal Khashoggi case and its impact on the US-Saudi relation. So this Jamal Ahmad Khashoggi was a Saudi Arabian journalist, dissident and the author and a general manager and editor-in-chief of the Al Arab news channel, and he has been assassinated in the Saudi Arabian consulate in the Istanbul. So the Istanbul has been appeared in the newspaper, so please refer this in the map and find its location. So this is the assignment for you, and please comment the location of the Istanbul and the country to which Istanbul is located. And further, the Jamal Khashoggi case put US into the difficult situation as this Trump and his son-in-law has a cordial relationship with the Mohammed bin Salman, and he is the deputy prime minister of the Saudi. And further, during an interview, the Trump has vowed that to get the bottom of the cases, and that if there is involvement of the Saudi in this case, then there will be severe punishment, or the US will be imposing severe punishment and sanction against the Saudi. So in retaliation to this, a vexed reply has come from the Saudi foreign ministry, and he says that if Saudi Arabia receives any such action or the sanctions which is from the US, then it will respond with greater action, citing the oil-rich kingdom's influential and vital role in the global economy. And in cases if there arises a clash between the two countries, it would have a direct effect on the world economy, and especially India is having a close relation and a interest in both these countries. A turmoil in or a difference in opinion between this country will directly impact the India, and especially the Saudi is one of the trading partner of India in relation to the oil and the petroleum. So in cases if the US is going to impose any kind of the sanction on the Saudi, it will impact the oil price, and this will have serious repercussions in the Indian economy. Now, if US sanctions are imposed on the Saudi, we will be facing the economic disaster that would rock the entire world, because Saudi is one of the topmost oil exporting country in the world along with Russia. Now let's analyze some of the recent developments. So the Central Intelligence Agency, that is CIA, which is the spying agency of the USA, has recently concluded that the Mohammed bin Salman, he is the deputy prime minister and the prince of the Saudi, the Saudi Arabian crown prince, personally ordered the killing of the Jamal Khashoggi. So it clearly shows the direct involvement of the MBS or the Mohammed bin Salman. But the US President Donald Trump seems unfazed by both the findings of the spy agency and the mounting global outcry to take actions against the Saudi Arabia. So why this US is reluctant to take actions against the Saudi? Let's examine. And the Trump has called the CIA assessment as very premature, while the Secretary of the State Mike Pompeo has said that the US historic commitment to the Saudi Arabia is absolutely vital to America's security and its interest in the Middle East. So because of the growing interest of the USA in the Middle East and its cordial relation with Israel, Saudi has become a crucial partner for the US, and because of this, the US is reluctant to take any action against the Saudi. Now let's analyze the US policy towards Saudi over the time. So while the strategic potentials of the partnership has been shrinking, the US has come under the great scrutiny, especially after the 9/11 World Trade Center attack, and for its support from the Saudi Arabia and this Wahhabi kingdom of the Saudi Arabia that stands opposite to everything that the US preaches on the global stages, from the democracy and respecting this human rights to religious freedom and independent media. So even the recent issues on the independent media, so the US is strongly pushing for this independent media, and the Saudi has killed a media person, but still the US is keeping calm on the issue. And further, it was said the broad context that allowed former US President Barack Obama to take a different approach towards the Saudi Arabia. So this is the broad context under which the US President has taken a different strategy to deal with Saudi Arabia. He retained the fundamental elements of the partnership, including the trade, economic ties, arms deal, then the security guarantees, while he refused to act in Syria on the Saudi's behalf and moving further ahead to have a nuclear deal with Iran. So even though it is against the interest of the Saudi, the US has moved to sign a nuclear agreement with Iran. So in case of this too, that is the US interventions in the Syria and the nuclear deal with Iran, the US has moved against the interest of the Saudi. but it has retained its close relation in the fundamental aspects like the economic ties, arms sale, and the security guarantees. And also, it has a strong relation in Saudi with the trade. Then he even asked the Saudi and the Iranian to share the West Asia and institute a cold peace in the region. So the America has been over the time reluctant in interfering this tension or the conflict between the Iran and Saudi, and they advised both the countries to have a cold peace in the region. But when the President Trump has came to power, he has reversed this approach and built the administration's West Asia policy, making Saudi Arabia its centerpiece. So why the Saudi Arabia has become a crucial player for the USA? It is because the twin objectives of the Trump's policy are to ensure the Israel security. So here the Israel and Iran is having a tension, and the Iran is against the Israel, and Saudi is having a more dilute or a more mild approach towards the Israel. So the US has come close to Saudi to oppose the Iran to have a stability in the region for the Israel. And the second one factor which brought the Trump close to Saudi is the Iranian influence. Then it is this tilt that now stopping the Trump from moving against the Saudis. Then the administration has already declared what its Iran policy is. We know that the US has moved away from the Iran nuclear deal, and further the US is proposing to impose certain sanctions on the Iran. So it has already pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear deal. Then the America needs Saudi support in their effort to isolate and weaken the Iran, something Israel too has been demanding for the years. So it was following this Israel interest that the the US is moving close to Saudi in order to weaken the Iran. So this is the geopolitics of this region and the interest of the US in the region. So with this, we are coming to the conclusion on this topic, and we will be discussing the next topic. Next topic, that is the KATOWICE climate meet. So this is in Poland. So the location become very significant because in recent times the UPSC is asking those news in place in the UPSC to match it with the country of relevance. So this KATOWICE climate meet is the COP24, that is Conference of Parties 24, that is going in the Poland. So let's analyze this topic in relation to the climate change and the growing importance of the maintaining a climate policy. So the editorial appeared on the Hindu newspaper is that still on the last chance of the saloon. So the last chance on the saloon is a term used to indicate that the last opportunity to have a success, or when it comes to the climate change or the climate related issues, it becomes the last chance for the survival. So why this is in news? It is because the COP24 or the 24th Conference of the Parties that is related to UNFCCC begins at Katowice in the Poland. And the topics comes under GS paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, and the environmental impact assessment. And along with this topic, you should also be focusing on the climate change and its impact, then the air pollution, United Nations framework for the climate change, then intended nationally determined contribution, what is this and the relevance of this, then the Kyoto Protocol, which is to regulate the greenhouse gas emission, then the Paris Climate Agreement and its relevance, and the recent issues related to this Paris Climate Agreement, which includes the US walkout from this Paris Climate Agreement. Now let's first to come UNFCCC. The United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change is an international environmental treaty that is adopted in 1992, and it has adopted or open for the signature in the Earth Summit in the Rio de Janeiro. So the Earth Summit has happened in this Rio de Janeiro in 1992, and it has been opened. The UNFCCC agreement has been opened in the Rio de Janeiro. Then it then entered into force in the 21st March in 1994 after sufficient members of the countries had ratified it, and approximately 194 countries are cooperating or are part of this UNFCCC now. The UNFCCC's objective is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent the dangerous anthropogenic interferences with the climate change. So this anthropogenic interference is the human interferences, that is human generated climatic events. So in order to counter or to contain this human interfered climatic changes in the system, that is the objective of the UNFCCC. Then the framework set non-binding limits on the greenhouse gas emission for the individual countries, and it contains or it doesn't have any of the enforcement mechanisms. Then let's look how it functions. So instead, the framework outlines how specific international treaties called the protocols of the agreement may be negotiated to specify further actions towards the objectives of the UNFCCC. And the purpose of the meeting, let's analyze the COP meetings in the recent times and in general. So the purpose of the COP meeting is to set guidelines or agree on the rule book to implement the pledges that were made by various committees at the Paris Climate Conference in the 2015. So the COP21 has happened in the Paris. So this is known as the Paris Climate Conference or the agreement, that is in 2015. So in the nationally determined contribution or the INDC, intended nationally determined contribution plan ahead of the Paris COP21. So this has been adopted in the COP21, and each country described the action it would take and to level to which the greenhouse gas emission would be reduced, that is the mitigation strategies. And further, at Paris, the global community agreed to try to limit the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level, since the effects can be there beyond that. So the countries has been agreed to limit the global climate rise or the temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. If it exceeds the limit, then it will be having serious catastrophic effect on the environment or the global climate. Then the small island nations already faces the devastating effect. Few of the small islands has been submerged. Then with the rise of the mean sea level temperature due to this climate change, and many of them also describes what they would do to improve their capacity to live in warmer world. So that is warmer world, that is adaptation. So the two strategies, first one is the mitigation and the second one is the adaptation. So these are the two strategies the countries has adopted in the COP21 in order to counter the climate change induced events. So the adaptation and the extent to which these goals require to support the form of finance or the technology transfer. So the countries has also agreed to financial transfer and the technology assistance, that is from the developed countries to the developing countries, in order to combat the climate change. Now let's analyze the importance or relevance of this 24th meeting of the Conference of Parties. So this KATOWICE comes soon after the special publication by the International Panel on the Climate Change, the 1.5 degree report that is titled as All Hands on Deck Alarm. Then according to which what we need are far-reaching, speedy, transformative changes in our societies in order to stay below this 1.5 degree Celsius rise in the global temperature. Then calling for an immediate and the drastic drop in the global greenhouse gas emission through the technology and the lifestyle, and focus on the mitigation and the adaptation. So the mitigation and the adaptation strategies adopted in the former COP21. Then the average global temperature have crossed a degree Celsius above the pre-industrial level already, and such concentration and the further concentration of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So already there is a 410 part per million of the concentration, which is the highest and has never been seen by human before. Then the 24th meeting of this Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change in the KATOWICE, Poland. It is happening from the December 3 to 14, is meant to take forward the steps to address these threats of the climate change. Then the KATOWICE climate meet must ensure that today's children do not inherit a planet heading to a catastrophe. So a planet that is heading to the catastrophe cannot be handed over to the next generation. For that, we have to take the sustainable development goal path, that is consuming the present resources without harming the needs of the future generation. Now let's analyze some of the important observations made in the KATOWICE conference. So world can save 1 million lives by meeting Paris goals on the air pollution. So the air pollution causes a health or the life cost. So the evidence is clear that the climate change is already having a serious impact on the human lives and the health, and it can threaten the basic elements we all need for the good health, that is the clean air, safe drinking water, nutritious food supply, and safe shelter, etc. And this will undermine the decades of progress in the global health, and we cannot afford to delay the action any further. It demands a immediate action against the climate change induced events. And further, the World Health Organization Director of the Public Health, Environment and the Social Determinants of the Health has given that if all goes fine, the value of the health gains from the climate actions in India and China will be more than double the cost of mitigation measures. So it will be cost effective if we are taking the climate actions rather than going for this mitigation measures, because of the high cost that is required for the mitigation measures compared to the climate action. Then when health is taken into account, climate change mitigation is an opportunity and not a cost for both India and China. And further, the report adds that the air pollution alone kills approximately 7 million people in the world every year and costs a welfare loss of worth 5.1 trillion. Then the 15 countries which emit the most amount of the greenhouse gases spend approximately 4% of their GDP on the health impacts of the air pollution. So for example, we could take the case of the Delhi. So in order to contain the air pollution, the Delhi government is taking so much of measures which is having the serious impact on the economic and the social development of the Delhi. Also, it causes the health effect, and further it leads to the financial expenditure from both sides of the government and from the side of the public as the out-of-pocket expenditure. And this is when the action to meet the Paris goals cost around 1% of the GDP. On the other hand, in order to mitigate the climate-induced events, the countries are spending approximately 4% of their GDP. So the Paris goals will take approximately 1% of the GDP. So which means the better way is to mitigate the climate change, or rather address the climate change. Now let's analyze the climate change and the health costs specifically. So what is driving climate change is exactly what is affecting people's health. So for example, this fossil fuel combustion is the main contributor to the climate change as well as the air pollution. So here also we could take the example of the Delhi and the thermal power plants. And this thermal power plants is causing the emissions of the CO2 and other kinds of the greenhouse gases, and this is leading to pollution and also the health impact. Then if the world switches to a low carbon energy sources as prescribed in the Paris Agreement, it will not only improve this air quality but also provide opportunities for immediate health benefit. And for example, the cycling can help the increase the physical activity, and which will protect the people from the diseases like diabetes, cancer and the heart ailments. So these are the non-communicable diseases. So if you are taking the if you are taking the immediate measures in order to improve the or to change the lifestyles, it will be having a positive impact on the health of the people. Then the World Health Organization suggests that the countries should count health while doing a cost benefit analysis. So at present, if we are calculating, or when India is calculating the catastrophic losses or the GDP losses that is induced because of this climate change induced calamities, we are not taking into consider this health cost. So when the World Health Organization is suggesting that in future if the countries is calculating this, then they should also take into account this health cost while doing the cost benefit analysis of this climate change mitigation. Then the UN health policy also proposes the physical incentives be used to motivate the sectors to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. Then engaging with the health community, civil society and the health professions will also help in mobilizing collectively to promote the climate action and the health co-benefits. So if you are taking a collective actions towards addressing or promoting this climate action, the health will be co-benefited out of it. Now let's analyze some of the challenges or the concerns of the climate mitigation efforts. The first one is that as the emission or the assessment and the report process is standardized, the implementation of the Paris Agreement would be more grounded. So here the emission, assessment and the report process has been standardized, but when it comes to the estimated adaptations that is taken by different countries, there is no general agreement or general process to compile it. So this is more complicated and varied and is still being in development. So we cannot calculate or we cannot account this adaptation measures taken by the different countries, and we don't know whether this adaptation measures are adequate. Then there has been little if any progress on the financial technology transfer and capacity development over the time. So we know that in COP21 the different countries have agreed for the financial assistance and the technology transfer. This is from the developed countries to the developing countries, but there has been no such capacity development, financial transfer or the technology assistance to the different countries. Then Article 9.5 requires the developed countries to communicate their level of support, including pledge of additional finances, and this has also not happened. Even a rough estimate of the financial needs for the implementing this nationally determined contribution puts it at 4.4 trillion. Then according to the 2016 benefit paper, that is by the German Watch, the climate fund updates of the 2018 notes the multilateral fund pledged until 2017 are less than 30 billion. So it falls far short of this 4.4 trillion amount that is being calculated or estimated as the financial needs. So the German watch has become very significant for the prelims examination. So it is releasing several reports and the indexes. So one of such index is the climate change index, so under which the India has been ranked 14, so which is a good performance for the India. So the points related to the German watch and the reports released by the German watch has been given in the daily current affairs notes, and which has been shared in the Telegram channel, and you can join to download this PDF. And moving forward, the ethical foundations of the climate change fights on the global stages are based largely on the occupation of the atmospheric carbon spaces by rich countries and leaving little room for growth by the latecomers, which are poor nations. So it is the developed countries or the wealthy nations that is determining the global climate change or the policies which has to be taken in order to mitigate the climate change, and this poor nations is having a low voice, or rather no voice. Now let's analyze the way forward. So as extreme events are on the rise, the separate stream referred to as loss and damage needs attention. Then this is a provision for support to the poor countries experiencing the economic and the non-economic losses and the destruction from the climate change events. There has not been much progress on this issue by the task force that is set up to advance it. So this is an important topic to be discussed at the KATOWICE, and let's hope it will be discussed. Then moving forward, the implementations of the activities of the Paris Agreement formally begins in the 2020 and it concludes in 2030. So this is the period in which the Paris Agreement goals has to be met. So we are currently in the Doha Amendment period, which is the second phase of the Kyoto Protocol, which has not been ratified completely. So in a couple of years after the start of the Paris Agreement implementation, we will have the stock taking reviews, progress, and the deciding on more stringent targets to be followed in the future. So from 2020 onwards, we are going to implement this Paris Climate Agreement. So in each year, we will have to take the review of this agreement and how well it is being implemented. So this renewed committee towards the future means that the countries have to trust each other. So each time when we make the reviews, there may be some countries who are falling short of their intended nationally determined contributions or those measures which they have taken in order to address the climate change. In such times, the countries may be either penalized or the countries may be pushed to take further actions. In such cases, the countries need mutual trust. So that's what this is given. So the mutual trust each other, and which would mean that fulfilling the obligations is a foundation of future ambitions and the action. So there will be mutual. Next topic, that is witness protection scheme. So an article has been appeared in the newspaper, that is shielding this witnesses. So let's analyze the news value. So the Supreme Court has approved the center's draft witness protection scheme and asked all states to implement it till Parliament comes out with a legislation. The court also made some changes into the schemes. So that's how the news has appeared in the newspaper. So the topic comes under the GS paper 2, the structure, organization and the functioning of the executive and the judiciary. And related to this topic, you should also cover the PIL, the National Legal Service Authority, its function, role and how it has been constituted. Then the Bureau of Police Research and the Development, then the terms related to the judicial proceedings. Now let's analyze the backgrounds. So here when it comes to judicial proceedings, you should be focused on judicial review, judicial activism, then judicial overbridge, judicial creativity, etc. So this all terms has been appeared in the newspaper in recent times. Now let's analyze the background of this witness protection scheme. The issue of the witness protection scheme had cropped up earlier when the top court was hearing a public interest litigation seeking the protection for the witness in the rape cases involving the Asharam Bapu, who has been accused and is being caught for the rape attempt. Then during the hearing, the Attorney General had told the top court that the draft scheme, which has now been finalized, would be made into law in due course, but till then the court should direct the state to start the implementation of this scheme. Then the threat faced by the witness. So in the current system, there is little incentive for the witness to turn up in the court and testify against the criminals because they faces threats from the criminals. And besides threats to their lives, they experiences the hostility and the harassments while attending the court, and even their families were being targeted. Then let's analyze the highlights of the draft scheme. The draft witness protection scheme has been finalized in consultation with the National Legal Service Authority and the Bureau of Police Research and Development. So these two institutions become relevant in the prelims perspective with respect to this news. Then the types of protections measured envisages under the scheme are to be applied in proportion to the threat, and they are not expected to go on for the infinite time. So here the two challenges is that first one, the proportion, that is the Supreme Court has told that the protection has to be in proportion to the threat. So in cases of the serious cases, if the opponent is a strong either in political, economic or in other influential terms, then the threat faced by the victim or the witness will be more. So in such cases, the protection has to be strengthened, and at the same time it shouldn't go for the infinite time. So here the issues with the judicial proceedings in India, the judicial proceedings takes long time. So until and unless this judicial proceedings has been completed, the protection to the witness has to be provided. And the other threat or the other challenges existing here is that if the High Court has been providing this protection with respect to the witness, this witness protection scheme, and once the case in the High Court is over, this protections will cease. And if the accused is going to file an appeal in the Supreme Court, and meanwhile this witness is having no protection and he will be vulnerable to the threat and the attack from the accused. And further, the scheme envisages that there should be safeguards that witness and accused do not come face to face during the investigation or trial, and adequate security measures should be there for the safety of the witness. So here the executive is the liable. So in cases the police has to take the such measures, but a few days before we have analyzed how this judicial proceedings is not reaching to the implementation level. So the success of this direction has to be wait and watched. Then the scheme provided for identity protection and giving a new identity to the witness. And further, the scheme shall extend to the whole of India except to the state of the Jammu and Kashmir. Then as per the scheme, the police escort will be provided to the witness who are threatened, and if needed they will be reallocated to a safe houses. And also the scheme says the mails and phone calls of the witness will be monitored in order to trace any kinds of threat. Then it said a separate witness protection fund will be created, and this will be used to finance the expenses incurred. Then the witness protection complex will be set up in all district court by the state and the union territory within a year, where the witness could fearlessly dispose against the high and the mighty without coming to face in face with the accused. And the witness protection scheme also categorizes the witness into category A, B and C. So this category A includes where the threat extends to life of the witness or his family members, and their normal way of living is affected for a substantial period during the investigation or trial or even thereafter. So such persons falls under this category A. And when it comes to the category B, where the threat extends to the safety, reputation or property of the witness or his family members only during the investigation process or the trial. And the third is the category C, where the threat is moderate and extends to harassment or intimidation of the witness and his family members, the reputation or the property during the investigation process. Now let's analyze the significance of this witness protection scheme. So the witness, being the eye and the ear of the justice, play an important role in bringing the perpetrator to the justice or to bring before the justice. Then the crime is the first attempt at the scheme is the first attempt at the national level to holistically provide for the protection of the witness, which will go a long way in eliminating the secondary victimization. So what is meant by the secondary victimization? So in cases if a person is being accused or being caught because of committing a crime, so say for example the person B has killed the person A, and the person C has come to give his witness report or the witness against the person B. So in order to escape out of this cases, the person B may either threaten or kill this person C. So in order to escape out of this case, the person B may either threaten or kill this person C. So in such cases, the C becomes the secondary victim. So the scheme provides the protection in order to avoid such secondary victimization. And moving further, this scheme's attempt at ensuring that the witness receives appropriate and the adequate protection. It also strengthens the criminal justice system in the country and will consequently enhance the national security scenario. So we know that the justice or the judiciary forms the third pillar of the democracy. So this witness protection program will help to strengthen the credibility and faith in judiciary, which another term is the strengthening of the democracy and its deep-rooting this democratic system. And moving forward, the victim and the witness of serious crimes are particularly at risk when the perpetrator is powerful, influential or rich. The victim or the witness belong to the socially and economically marginalized community. So in such cases, such persons who has been coming from this marginalized or from the weaker sections of the society need the support of the state and the police, and his identity has to be protected. And the girls and women who report the sexual violences are often even more vulnerable and face extreme pressure or direct threat from the accused. Also, witness needs to have the confidence to come forward to assist law enforcement and the prosecutorial authorities. then they need to be assured that they will receive support and the protection from the intimidation and harm that the criminal groups may seek to inflict upon them in attempt to discourage or punish them from the cooperating. So only if the witness feels safe and secure, he will come forward to assess the law enforcement and to bring the perpetrator before the justice. Further, the legislative measures to emphasize the prohibition against tampering of the witness have become the eminent and the inevitable need of the day. In 2013, with the Justice v. Melimuth Committee has become significant. So you should be having a just focus on this Melimuth Committee and its significance. So on the criminal justice system had recommended enacting a separate witness protection scheme in the 2006, and further the Law Commission of India in its 198th report provided for a draft witness protection law. Then besides the countries like USA, United Kingdom, China, Italy, Canada, and further countries of the Hong Kong and Ireland, they are all have this witness protection scheme. So this is part of a developing and the modern democratic system. So India should also adopt such a scheme. So with this we are coming to the conclusion. So the notes has been provided in the Telegram channel and you can download it from the Telegram channel, and further the daily questions will be posted in the Telegram and the WhatsApp group. The link for the same is being given below the comment box and the discussion.